What's happening, everyone? My name is James Lynch. Today's video is going to be part of a series of videos you're going to see on this channel looking back on the year that was in the UFC for 2024. And today's topic is going to cover fights that did not end up happening, fights that were scheduled, that got canceled. I'm going to give you my top 10 list looking through all the fights that did not end up taking place this year. And at the very end, I want you to list your top 10 of fights that you wanted to see that didn't end up happening. I'm also going to throw out some honorable mentions as well. The UFC does events almost every weekend, so some of these you'll probably forget even were scheduled to take place. And coming in at number 10 was Anthony Hernandez and Ikram Aliskerov, UFC 298. Aliskerov having to withdraw from the fight. That was back in February 17th, on February 17th, I should say. This would have been an awesome fight. Obviously, Anthony Hernandez getting a really big win in his last fight over Michel Pereira. He ends up fighting him later in the year. And Ikram, I believe the last fight he had was the Rob Whittaker fight. So he scheduled to fight Andre Muniz this February. But I hope these two cross paths at one point. Obviously, a lot of hype behind Ikram. And I think with Anthony Hernandez now booked against Brendan Allen, curious to see how he performs in 2025. Big opportunity for him at UFC Seattle. So that comes in at number 10. Number 9, let's get to this one on the list. Might not be the most popular one from everyone, but Rose Namajunas and Maycee Barber. This would have been an interesting fight because of the fact that obviously these two trained a bit together in the past. Big fight in the flyweight division. Maycee Barber's had some health issues. She withdrew from that fight. Namajunas ended up fighting Tracy Cortez instead. That was on July 13th. Rose ended up getting the win in that one, but maybe this is the fight that could happen down the line. Obviously, Rose losing to Erin Blanchfield as well later in the year too. We'll see. As at the time of recording this, no ETA, no timeline on Maycee Barber's return to the cage. So I don't know if this fight will happen, but I do want to see it at one point. Big fight in the flyweight division. Okay, let's get to number 8 here. Another fight I think people forgot about because, again, it was scheduled and didn't end up happening, and that was Sean Brady and Vicente Luque. That was a really interesting fight. At the time of recording this, Vicente Luque coming off a big win last night over Temba Garimbo. Brady, of course, getting the win over Gilbert Burns in his last fight. He ends up fighting Burns later in the year. And this would have been an interesting one. They're about the same age. Obviously, Luque with a lot more experience, but with that coming a lot more damage as well. The stoppage losses to Joaquin Buckley and Jeff Neal. Maybe this is the fight that'll happen down the line, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I know Luque last night calling out Jorge Masvidal. Don't know if that's the type of win that'll get him a fight like Sean Brady, but we'll see if this fight ends up getting rescheduled at one point. But this was a very interesting matchup at the time. Between the two, and you look at the picks there, 77% of people picking Brady. I think that's probably the right call based off what Brady ended up doing after that. Coming in at number 7, this is one I'm really bummed we didn't get to see at UFC 309, and that was Nikita Krylov and Azamat Murzakanov. Big fight in the division. Two really talented fighters in the weight class. Murzakanov having to withdraw from that one. I'm wondering if they're going to reschedule this fight. I think the matchmaking made a lot of sense. I'm not sure exactly why Murzakanov had to remove himself. I believe it was an injury, but hopefully they can rebook this one for next year. Two ranked opponents, two fighters who are very much chomping at the bit. And again, Murzakanov undefeated. You got Krylov, who's slowly making his way to a title shot. So we'll see what happens there. But that's another fight I wish we would have saw on that big 309 card. Okay, coming in at number 6, especially with the hindsight of what we've seen after that, is Jamal Hill and Cleo Roundtree. Remember, this fight was supposed to take place on the same card as Yuri Prochazka and Alex Pereira at UFC 303. Hill having to pull out of the... Well, first it was Roundtree who pulled out, then Hill was supposed to fight Carlos Ulberg, and then Hill having to pull out, and bunch of switch-ups there. But looking back now with how well Cleo Roundtree did against Alex Pereira, with Jamal Hill obviously looking to rebound off that loss to Alex Pereira, I think this fight would have been really interesting. Very good stylistic matchup for the fans. Two strikers, and not a huge age gap here either, 33 to 34. I do want to see this fight at some point. Again, this was the whole issue with Roundtree being suspended for the banned substance, so that's why he was out of this fight. Maybe we'll see this fight in 2025. We'll see. Jamal Hill currently scheduled to face Yuri Prochazka at UFC 311. Okay, coming in at number 5, we got to see him last night, put on a pretty good performance despite losing, and that is Ian Gary and Joaquin Buckley. Of course, they switched up the fight with Gary and put in Colby Covington. Gary fights Shavkat Rakhmonov, ends up losing that fight, but this would have been a fun fight. Buckley's on quite the role. I think Gary last night very much proved that he's in the title picture, I think, even with losing that fight to Shavkat Rakhmonov. I wonder if we will see this down the line. Both are, age-wise, Buckley just a few years older in this one, Gary a lot taller. Curious to see at the time of recording this, obviously Buckley's still got to fight Colby Covington, but am curious to see how that fight would go. I guess we'll find out how Buckley does against Covington, but I hope this is a fight we do see down the line. Just a circumstance of them needing to beef up the UFC 310 card, and it worked out well because, again, I think everyone kind of got what they wanted. We got a good fight with Shavkat. Shavkat gets to keep active, and Buckley gets to fight Colby, which I think was a bit of a surprise. Okay, coming in at number 4, people are going to disagree with me on this one, but understand the context here, and that is Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen. I know what everyone's going to say. These are two middleweights who, especially in Vettori's case, who's on, a bit of a skid right now, hasn't won a fight in a while, and Brendan Allen coming off a tough loss to Nasruddin Imavov. But how about the buildup to this fight? These guys really don't like each other. They did end up actually fighting, just not, anything they got paid for at the casino in Florida. If you remember, there's that video circulating around on the internet, and I actually have a video of this on this channel doing some commentary, but I hope this fight happens at some point. Brendan Allen's currently scheduled to fight Anthony Hernandez, like I mentioned, at UFC Seattle. I do think that Vettori and Allen down the line could happen. Vettori gets a win, maybe Allen. I think Allen win or lose, he could still fight Vettori at some point. Vettori hasn't fought in a long time. I'm going to actually have a video out on fighters that did not compete this year. Vettori was certainly someone that did not have any action, but I just want to see this fight because there's already that built-in beef between the two of them. It's funny because they have the same manager too, but I hope this is a fight we do get to see down the line. I think it could potentially happen in 2025. Okay, number 3. I think a lot of people forgot about this fight that I'm about to mention next, and I only remember it because I actually went to this card and was disappointed. They didn't even get a replacement for this card. They just completely scrapped the fight. And that was Jan Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic, the rematch. Of course, their first fight ending in a bit of an injury. This was going to be a great fight. I was very much excited for this one. And again, they ended up moving Rakic to the Yuri Prohaska fight at UFC 300. And Blachowicz didn't fight at all in 2024. So yeah, we'll see what's next. At the time of recording this, Blachowicz does have an opponent booked, apparently. We're waiting to hear who that is. But yeah, this would have been just a great fight, especially like an international fight between these two. You got, the Serbian against the Polish fighter. Yeah, I do want to see this rematch at some point because again, it kind of ended in an injury. I thought the fight was fairly even until that injury. So I would like to see these two run it back at some point. And another fight that unfortunately did not end up happening. Actually, I'm just seeing now I have the wrong page up here. This was actually their first fight that they had there. I'm talking about this fight here. Where was it? This one here. From UFC 297. This was supposed to be on the Duplessis and Strickland card. So yeah, that's the fight that did not end up happening at UFC 297. That pay-per-view would have been better if this fight ended up taking place. Okay, coming in at number 2 is a fight we are going to see next year. Of course, like I mentioned, the time of recording this, Shavkat Rakhmonov getting the win last night. Oh, why is this not going in there? Getting the win last night over Ian Gary. He's going to be next. They did the face-off already. But this was still one of the top fights I wanted to see this year. And that is Bilal Muhammad, the welterweight champion, against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I know a lot of people are saying, they weren't too impressed with Shavkat's performance. But let's remember the layoff that he had going into the Ian Gary fight. I think both these guys with a full camp is going to be a very, very, very interesting matchup. Very excited to see this one. Obviously, Bilal a lot older here at 36 compared to 30. Shavkat a bit bigger as well, but yeah, by all accounts, sounds like Bilal is on the road to recovery. Hopefully we'll see this fight fairly soon, but this is, to me, the second biggest fight that we did not get to see this year. You could have put this at number 1, honestly. I wouldn't have an issue with that. I'll tell you what number 1 is. I'm sure most people know, but just from a pure interest standpoint, just like the hardcore fans, this would have been a really cool fight to have to cap off the end of 2024. And number 1, I don't think this is any surprise to anyone, and I'm basing this purely off name value, entertainment, everything else. And that is Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, the biggest tease in UFC history. Was supposed to take place at UFC 303. We all know what happened there. McGregor with the broken toe. I mean, he did have a broken toe, but I think there's some other things that are at play as to why that fight did not happen. I don't know if Conor fights again. I think it's really a coin flip. I think it's up in the air at this point if Conor ever fights again. Michael Chandler, of course, having to take the fight with Charles Oliveira. I shouldn't say have to. I mean, there was a good opportunity for him to get in the title picture if he would have beat Oliveira. But I don't know. Listen, if McGregor does end up coming back, I would like to see this fight at some point, just to give Michael Chandler his due. The guy waited around forever. I would like to see this fight take place. I'd like to see Conor fight again, and considering what's happened outside the cage, I know he's still very much wealthy and has a lot of money, but I do wonder if he does consider coming back to make a little extra cash. Yeah, I hope Conor comes back. But to me, I'm just basing this off name value. Again, Conor McGregor, I know there's people that don't like him. That's totally fair, but you can't deny he's still the biggest name in the sport. for all the right or wrong reasons, doesn't matter. But Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, the biggest fight that did not happen. Just imagine if this did take place at UFC 303, how much of a different card this could have been in terms of name value and everything else. Anytime Conor McGregor fights, people are watching. He's got that big name feel. And again, I'm talking about Conor McGregor, the fighter, not Conor McGregor outside the cage. Okay, people? I know people get upset when we bring up McGregor, but you can't ignore the elephant in the room that is McGregor. He is the biggest star in the UFC. You know, but at 35 and him not fighting since when was the Poirier fight? It was 2022, I think. Or was it even before that? Yeah, 2021. It's not looking so good that Conor's going to come back. Percentage that this fight happens, I'm going to go 35%, but I hope they do end up making it happen and rebooking this fight in 2025. Want to do a couple honorable mentions as well as some other fights that did not take place this year. Chris Curtis, Kevin Holland would have been a fun fight. Holland is moving back to 185. Of course, Curtis now going to be fighting Roman Kopylov on, I believe it's either 311 or, yeah, I think it's UFC 311. Or no, it's the, is it the Apex card or 311? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's the Apex card. So he's going to be fighting Roman Kopylov. So yeah, Kevin Holland, Chris Curtis was supposed to take place at UFC 307 in Utah. Holland ends up getting rebooked, and Curtis is, like I said, fighting someone else. So that didn't happen. Another honorable mention here, mentioned him earlier, was Anthony Hernandez. He was actually supposed to fight Roman Dolidze this year. Sorry, my tab skills need some work here. UFC 302, Islam and Poirier was supposed to be on that card back in June, and Hernandez had a hand injury. That would have been a cool fight as well. In fact, you could have probably put this one over the Akram fight, to be honest. I think Dolidze is just as an exciting opponent. That would have been interesting to see what would happen in that fight. Two good middleweights there. And then a couple more notable ones here that I think people forgot. Alexander Volkov and Jalton Almeida would have been a fun fight as well. That was also supposed to take place at UFC 302. With how Volkov performed last night against Cyril Gane, and with a lot of people felt like he won the fight, I think Volkov probably would have won that, but you never know. Maybe Almeida takes him down and ragdolls him. I don't know. We'll see. I'm only going to mention this one just because of name value. This was a fight I was glad we did not see, and I don't think this fight should ever take place. But Vicente Luque and Nick Diaz, this was actually canceled twice. If you remember, it was supposed to be on the Middle East card, and then it was supposed to take place yesterday at UFC 310. Temba Garimbo replaces Diaz, but yeah, I don't care to see Nick Diaz fight anymore, but have to mention it just because he is a Diaz brother, and he's one of the most notable names in MMA history. And the last one I would have liked to have seen this year, I referenced it earlier, Jamal Hill and Carlos Ulberg, just from a stylistic standpoint, would have been very interesting to see how Ulberg would have done. Of course, Ulberg fighting Volkan Ozdemir, getting the win there, wasn't able to finish him. Could he have finished Jamal Hill? I don't know. I think that would be an interesting fight. Do think that's a fight that could end up happening at some point. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What would be your top 10 or just maybe even your top 5? I went through a lot of fights here. What are some fights you were disappointed we did not get to see take place this year? And let's just stick with fights that were actually scheduled. I don't want to talk about what ifs and, you know, because I mean, there's a whole list of fights that we could have come up with of potential fights that could have taken place this year. I'm just talking about fights the UFC actually scheduled. Makes it a little bit easier to do the list. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, at Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.